And good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very special broadcast today on the 21st day of October 2022. And Brisbane, well, it is mostly sunny, which also means bit of clouds. Yes, at this point in time, it is a little bit cloudy out there. 24 degrees, so it's getting more comfortable these days, but the humidity level is also rising at the moment. So, take care when you go out. You might not feel it, but, the sun's effects are still out there on the people and especially on the skin. So be careful, slip, slop and slap. We are in Queensland. Well, right now, let's take a look at what's happening. And, well, first of all, what do we have for you today? Well, number one, we have the daily news update. Then we'll also have our daily India report. And then we will look at functions and events that are taking place this weekend. And my God, there's a lot that's quite happening out there because Brisbane is hive with activities. There's just so much happening. And it was wonderful to see that the civic reception of all Diwali organisers yesterday by Brisbane Lord Mayor, Councillor Adrian Srina. And good to see Lalita Kalyala Bharatanatyam School perform a very special dance on the slaying of Nakasura, very linked with Diwali, and it was good to see that performance, and they did justice, and it was wonderful to have them as the performer yesterday at that civic reception. It was just so wonderful. Well, right now, let's get on with the news and see what's happening or what's making news out there. First of all, let's go to IEC, where it decriminalizes some of the country's most problematic drugs. Is it a step in the right direction? You decide.
Heroin users like Steve say a drug possession conviction only made it harder to get back on track.
It stopped me getting employment. You have to tick that box everywhere that you've got a criminal history, which made it really hard to get jobs.
He says users need medical help, not handcuffs, and that the ACT's controversial drug reforms are long overdue.
I suppose the war on drugs hasn't been very successful, so it's time to try something new, and this will be just a good step forward.
From October 2023, Canberra users found with small amounts of street drugs, including heroin, cocaine and ice, will get a fine or be ordered to attend rehab.
We are not encouraging people to use drugs, and we are not facilitating the trafficking or dealing of drugs with this change.
Federal Police had sounded the warnings.
So far, the evidence is not stacking up that decriminalisation necessarily leads to less crime.
But the Labor legislation will pass with Greens' support and the public backing of one major church group.
We are in no way pro-drugs. But if we want to solve the problem of drug addiction and drug use in our communities, we don't see treating it as a criminal issue actually is the way forward.
Critics point to the US city of Portland, where similar laws saw a spike in crime.
That is chaos, and we don't want to see that rolling out in Canberra.
I don't expect the sky to fall in, but I do expect that there will be increase in crime, increase in family violence, increase in unsociable activities, yet my members are going to have to there to pick up the pieces and hold the roof up for the ACT government yet again.
The ACT government now has a year to beef up drug treatment services before the changes come into place. Craig Allen, ABC News, Canberra.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. What do you reckon? For me, I always think that, drugs are drugs, and there's no need to decriminalize them. But the other thing is, whatever the law, well, whether decriminalized or not, small quantities or large quantities, whatever it may be, it needs to be consistent. It needs to be right across the nation, each and every state being consistent with the law. Otherwise, people cross the border and all of a sudden it's okay in one part of the country and it's not okay in the other part of the country. That is not a good scenario or good scene to be in. It must be uniform right across the board. Well, right now, let's go to Boris Johnson and what is happening out in UK.
What a mess. And this is not just a soap opera at the top of the Tory party. It's doing huge damage to our economy and to the reputation of our country. And the public are paying with higher prices, with higher mortgages. So we can't have a revolving door of chaos. We can't have another experiment at the top of the Tory party. There is an alternative, and that's a stable Labour government. And the public are entitled to have their say, and that's why there should be a general election. We can't just allow the Tory party to keep putting up the next candidate in the middle of this chaos. There is a choice. There's a Labour Party that's capable of, stabilising the economy, has a clear plan, and the public are entitled to choose between that stable Labour government and this utter chaos of the Conservatives.
And as you mentioned, the utter chaos, and it is not a very good scene. Here's that resignation.
I came into office at a time of great economic and international instability. Families and businesses were worried about how to pay their bills. Putin's illegal war in Ukraine threatens the security of our whole continent, and our country has been held back for too long by low economic growth. I was elected by the Conservative Party with a mandate to change this. We delivered on energy bills and on cutting national insurance. And we set out a vision for a low-tax, high-growth economy that would take advantage of the freedoms of Brexit. I recognise, though, given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party. This morning I met the chairman of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady. We've agreed that there will be a leadership election to be completed within the next week. This will ensure that we remain on a path to deliver our fiscal plans and maintain our country's economic stability and national security. I will remain as Prime Minister until a successor has been chosen. Thank you.
So that's that soccer announcement. Well, we will just have to wait and see what really happens there. So much happening in UK. Well, let's see how it is going to happen. Let's take a look at what's happening in New South Wales at the moment.
Construction at Barangaroo is about to hit a ceiling.
It's poor architecture that ruins great cities.
The New South Wales government wants buildings on the prime real estate to have a capped height. It follows Infrastructure New South Wales putting forward plans to allow taller buildings at central Barangaroo. That could have allowed a proposed 73-metre tower to be built. But the proposal has been shut down and buildings will be limited to the original restriction of about 35 metres.
Will ensure better public space, less shadowing, and ultimately as well better sight lines from Observatory Hill down to central Barangaroo.
I think it's a fantastic idea, like seeing how some of the buildings block the rest of town.
Bullshit, man. Bullshit. We're a developing country, man. There should be another 100 stories.
The Liberal Premier has an ally in a former Labor Prime Minister.
States get lucky. They get people with a civic conscience, and we have one with the Premier.
Paul Keating's compliments are few and far between. He took aim at critics of his beloved precinct with his acid tongue.
You know, if we left this to the ning-nongs and we're supposed to join with those fruitcakes, they can wriggle all they like on that particular hook, but I'm afraid they're stuck on it.
These height limits apply to the final section of Barangaroo being built behind me. The precinct developer has welcomed the government intervention, but it means it has to go back to the drawing board. The Premier has made it clear he wants this space open and accessible to everyone.
I don't want in 100 years people to look back and say the Perrottet government made these decisions that put developers before people.
A decision which could delay the precinct's completion by 2025. Cayman Gok, ABC News, Sydney.
Well, there you go. Is it okay to intervene after a project has begun, or should there have been more consultations and thought put into the place before it was given approval? Well, food for thought. Well, right now, let's take a look at what's happening on the weather front.
So we have seen plenty of thunderstorms again through Queensland, New South Wales and also Victoria overnight, but very much the focus has been through southern inland parts of Queensland into northeast New South Wales, where we've seen more than 110 millimetres falling at Moree in just the space of about 6 hours. So there is currently a severe thunderstorm warning there for intense rainfall, and that stretches all the way into Goondiwindi in southern Queensland. We also did see some very heavy falls of more than 50 millimetres along the coast from Cairns down to about Bowen, as well as inland through some of the central highlands and through other parts of New South Wales, including the Illawarra as well. So have seen a lot of rainfall coming through. It has caused some of these creeks to rise through some of those places. We have seen that heavier rainfall as well. So the thunderstorm threat isn't over just yet. We will be issuing further thunderstorm warnings through the day today.
What about the north of Victoria? We were expecting to see the rain start falling there, and we have.
Yeah, that's right. So we have seen a couple of millimetres of rainfall in the Gauges overnight. First at Rochester, they did see 6 millimetres overnight. It isn't much, but because everything's just so wet, for the Campaspe River, it did actually record a rise of about 15 to 20 centimetres just on that rainfall alone. So it just goes to show how wet these catchments are, and even a little bit of rainfall can cause flooding to basically reinvigorate all over again.
Flooding is always a little bit confusing because it doesn't necessarily relate exactly to how much rainfall you get as to how that river's going to respond. And actually on that, the latest advice is that the flood peak a little further up at Echuca is delayed. Why is that, and when can we expect to see it?
Yes, of course, the focus is very much along the Murray River at Echuca. So that's where two other rivers kind of meet. So the Campaspe River coming in from the south, and also the Goulburn River a little bit to the east of Echuca. And the difficulty with the Murray River is that because it is such a major system for many Australians, there are a lot of creeks and tributaries flowing into the river. So it can be quite difficult to forecast when each of those peaks come through, because each of those kind of creeks and tributaries feeding in do come in at different times. But of course, with the upcoming rainfall, it is also difficult to predict where exactly these thunderstorms will form. Because the next kind of system coming through will be quite patchy, hit and miss thunderstorms. So it does definitely present a challenge when kind of forecasting the peak, not just at Echuca, but further downstream of places like Kerrang and Swan Hill. But at Echuca, it is currently at major levels. It will remain very high over the next few days, and still expecting to get to about 95 metres above Australian height datum early next week, but still remaining major for quite a few days after that to come.
So there you go. That's the report from the Office of Meteorology. But right now, let's take a message from SES, because this is very important for people to follow these instructions.
That little bit of reprieve that we've got with the peak of that river will allow us to do a lot more sandbagging, a lot more community engagement with that community of Moama, and allow us to move some additional resources in there to assess those communities. We'll be doing some extensive work today with our Victorian colleagues to determine any additional assistance that we can provide each other through those community areas there, and that includes the establishment of welfare centres and things of that nature to assist those communities. So a lot of community messaging going out today. We do ask communities in that area, please heed our warnings. If we've asked you to evacuate, please evacuate. If you have a watch and act warning, start to get yourselves ready. Make sure that you have an evacuation plan, and that you have things such as essential medications, and you also have a means and ways of transporting your pets or your animals.
You talked about extra resources coming in. I've seen for myself on both sides of the river here in Echuca and in Moama just how tirelessly SES volunteers are working over the last week or so. How are the volunteers holding up?
Yeah, the volunteers are holding up very, very well, but it's a really good opportunity for members of the community to have a think about joining the SES, coming along, getting themselves in Orange and getting into the community. They'll learn some fantastic skills. They'll be very much engaged in their local communities, new friendships, and as I said, some great skills, and you become a really good part of that community and part of a fantastic organisation. So we're doing a lot of work in regards to supporting those with peer support and things of that nature, but the simple thanks that the community can offer to those people when they see them in the street and the other emergency services will go a long way. There's a long journey for our people to go. We have had 100 mil of rain in the Moree area this morning, which is also going to significantly impact upon there. The only other message we have is for people that are driving over the weekend, given the weather conditions that we have, please consider where you're driving. Please consider a route that doesn't allow you to cross flooded roads. And if you see a flooded road, forget it.
Forget it indeed. Ken Murphy there for the New South Wales SES. Thank you so much. Let's come back on this side of the Murray River now and bring in Tim Weebush. He's the Chief Officer with the Victorian SES. Tim, great to see you again this morning as well. What's the latest message you have for the people here in Echuca?
Yes, good morning, Michael. As you've mentioned already, a little bit of a reprieve around that area from Barmer all the way through to Echuca. So there are multiple communities in the lead up to Echuca, so at Barmer, Lower Moira, into Echuca itself that are under that evacuation emergency warning at the moment. As you've just heard from New South Wales, that is our most serious level of warning, and we are asking people to take themselves away from that flood threat. But the positive in that is we're expecting it to reach major flooding on the Victorian side at about 94.8 metres on Sunday, and then it'll continue to slowly increase through to that level of 95 metres AHD sometime Monday late into the early hours Tuesday.
Okay, and we had more rain overnight here in Echuca. It's thankfully stopped for the time being, only light rain, but also rain has fallen in a greater sense in Rochester, places like that. So what's the latest information you have about the impact of the rain on that already flooded town?
Look, I guess at this point in time, the rainfall that we've seen overnight has been, fortunately, very small in volume. We are expecting further rain with thunderstorms both today and tomorrow. We could see with isolated thunderstorms 20 to 30 mils. I guess the key difference, Michael, is we're not going to see that widespread rain band with hundreds of millimetres of rain like we saw in the previous event. This is very much about localised flooding in the first instance. But if we're unlucky enough to get 2 or 3 days over the same places with these storms, then that will potentially put some of our rivers into renewed rises, and that includes potentially for communities downstream of Eppalock like Rochester.
So as mentioned, that if it is flooded, forget it, and please also pay heed to the information that's been provided by SES and the Meteorological Department, and stay safe. Always, if it's flooded, forget it. Right now, let's go to Northern Territory, where an e-scooter rider has been found over the limit and riding. That is not an isolated case. Many of those incidents happen, and they're sometimes very annoying. And I think there has to be some strict rules, or something has to happen. It's causing a lot of problem within the city and a lot of havoc.
Teresa knows firsthand how a tipsy ride on an e-scooter can go terribly wrong.
Oh no, oh no. We tripped up over the footpath. I fell kind of face first and I fractured 3 of my teeth.
The 23-year-old managed to find her chipped front tooth on the pavement and calls herself one of the lucky ones.
I was having trouble eating, I was having trouble drinking, which obviously in Darwin is an issue when it's so hot.
Researchers in Darwin tracked e-scooter injuries in the city this year and found head trauma, broken bones and dental problems were the top injuries, costing the taxpayer $350,000 in hospital admissions alone.
So it does have a significant impact on an already stretched health service.
There's no denying hopping on an e-scooter can be fun and a convenient way of getting around in the tropics. But it's after dark that they're most problematic, especially when there's alcohol involved.
You know, it would be nice to see a bit more public health messaging. It would be nice to see harm reduction approaches that raise awareness.
The Queensland Government this month introduced speeding fines for scooter users. Researchers are calling on the Northern Territory Government to do more.
If there can be some measures that can be put in place to ensure both scooter users and other pedestrians are safer, we certainly would look at that.
The company that owns the scooters, Neuron, has defended its safety record. It's cold comfort for Teresa, who now refuses to go back on one, sober or otherwise.
If my friends say, oh, let's not drive, let's scooter there, I say I'd prefer to drive, thank you.
Once bitten,
twice shy, as they reckon, and of course the company will always hold back to their safety records, but there are no dedicated lines and things like that, and they scoot past in between the traffic and pedestrians who are walking and unaware that someone's just coming right at the back. If you just miss a turn, a slight turn, and bam, they come right into you. So that is something which really needs to be looked at. I have used the scooters myself, but now I think there has to be some new regulations coming in. I know Queensland government has put down speeding fines, but how do we police all that? Right now, let's go to South Australia, which has passed laws to changing the opening hours of shops.
Sunday shopping from 9 a.m.
I'm an early riser, so it's kind of nice to be able to get it over and done with.
And 9 is good, I think, for Sunday.
Especially when we've got our birthday, and then everything is going to open just from 11 a.m., which is not very convenient for me.
All shops, including supermarkets and retail stores, will soon be allowed to trade 2 hours earlier.
Sunday mornings have just become a lot more convenient for some South Australian families.
The changes are set to take effect in just weeks. The opposition says the government should have done more by allowing weekend trading past 5 o'clock. But it's not just Sundays. Late night Christmas trading has been enshrined in law too. It will allow shops to open until midnight on Black Friday and the 3 weeknights before Christmas. Boxing Day sales will also hit the suburbs instead of just the CBD, something the former government granted exemptions for but was never made law.
For too long, retail workers have had their rosters and working lives played with.
Complete and utter deregulation has been rejected twice over the last few years by every single member of the state's upper house except the Liberal Party.
But the opposition's already vowing to allow some public holiday shopping outside of Easter, Anzac Day and Christmas if elected in 4 years' time.
So there you are. So we are in a free society, in an independent country where you run a shop or a business and you are told when you can open and when you can close and shut. So that is such high regulation here. On the deregulation, apart from the Liberals, everyone else voted down. So, if it's your choice to open your shop and provide a service to the customers, should it be the government who tells you now you can't do it? Or should it be a free trade and free choice for you as long as you, follow all the rules and comply with the wages and the conditions in which the workers are working, if they are compensated properly, and it's a service that you are providing to the customers. Should your opening hours be dictated by the government? Food for thought. Well, right now let's go to Victoria, where the government is going to reinstall SEC to boost clean energy.
A relic of the past set for a comeback. The Premier wants a regeneration of the SEC.
The State Electricity Commission was owned by all of us and benefited all of us.
With the Loy Yang A coal-fired station closing by 2035, a re-elected Labor government would re-establish the SEC, which would take a controlling interest in new renewable energy projects.
There's been far too much focus on profit and not enough focus on people. Well, we're going to change that.
Big super funds have already been sounded out as co-investors. The taxpayers' return to be reinvested. Labor is also considering a government-owned retailer.
Lower bills and lower emissions.
The policy to put power back in public hands also comes with a legislated 95% renewable energy target by 2035 and net zero emissions by 2045. It will also speed up the closure of Loy Yang B. Not everyone is happy.
This will have a chilling effect on private investors ready to move into Victoria and invest in the much-needed renewable power projects.
I think the greatest chance of meeting these emission reduction targets and building a clean energy sector is by the government essentially taking charge.
This is a centrepiece policy pitch for re-election, a clear stake in the ground on cost of living. But that other major issue, the state of the health system, won't go away. The doctor who treated the Premier when he injured his back has complained his direct pleas to the Premier's office for Alfred Hospital upgrades have fallen on deaf ears.
We've been trying to get funding for a dozen years to replace antiquated operating theatres and such like, and in the recent announcement of hospital funding in the state's recovery, there's been absolute silence about the Alfred.
Surely he can pick the phone up to the head of the trauma department and have a conversation.
The government has spent more than $150 million on Alfred upgrades.
It's not polling day yet. There's lots of days to go.
37 to be precise. Richard Willingham, ABC News.
The Premier said it's not polling day yet, but it will be soon. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now it's time to go to our Daily India reporter, and with that, let's welcome PIO TV with the daily presentation.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you reports, interviews, features and more on India and the Indian diaspora. The Indian Embassy has asked Indians to evacuate from Ukraine at the earliest. The Indian Embassy in Ukraine issued an advisory for its citizens on October 19th to leave Ukraine at the earliest and not to travel to the war-torn country. This is in view of the deteriorating security situation and the recent escalation of hostilities. Indian citizens, including students in Ukraine, were told to evacuate at the earliest. The Indian Embassy advisory came hours after Russian President Vladimir Putin declared martial law in 4 regions of Ukraine that Moscow had annexed. Putin has given all regional governors in Russia emergency powers that opened the door for sweeping new restrictions throughout the country. According to Russian legislation, martial law could require banning public gatherings, introducing travel bans and curfews, and conducting censorship, among other restrictions. Ukraine has claimed massive loss of lives, including those of civilians. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky has said there is no space left for any talks with Putin. Earlier this month, India said it was deeply concerned at the escalation of the conflict in Ukraine, including the targeting of citizens and deaths of civilians. Veteran politician and long-time Indian National Congress leader Mallikarjun Kharge has been elected the new president of India's Grand Old Party. Indian National Congress on October 19th declared veteran leader Mallikarjun Kharge as its new chief, the first non-Gandhi to lead the party after 24 years. He will take charge on October 26th. Kharge, 80, is widely seen to be the candidate approved by the Sonia Gandhi-led family of the Nehru-Gandhi clan. He beat Dr. Shashi Tharoor in a straight contest. Kharge won 84% of the votes cast on October 17th. Kharge will take over from Sonia Gandhi, who agreed to temporarily lead the party when Rahul Gandhi stepped down in 2019, taking responsibility for successive general election defeats. As is the Congress tradition, Kharge wanted to visit Sonia Gandhi at her 10 Janpath home. But Sonia Gandhi decided that given the occasion, it should be the other way round. She drove to Kharge's 10 Rajaji Marg home with a bouquet. Kharge won 7,897 votes while Shashi Tharoor finished with 1,072. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is visiting India and will hold bilateral talks with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on October 20th. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is in India and began his official visit on October 19th by paying a tribute to the victims of the 2008 terrorist attacks that took place at the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel in Mumbai. Afterwards, he went to the Indian Institute of Technology in Mumbai, where he delivered a lecture hailing the partnership between the country and the UN in celebration of India's 75th independence anniversary. He said India's upcoming presidency of the G20 will be an important opportunity to bring the values and vision of the developing world to the top table of the global economy and highlight the global south. The Secretary General noted that India is the biggest provider of military and police personnel to UN missions, including the first all-women UN police contingent to be posted to a UN peacekeeping mission. He said that more than 200,000 Indian men and women had served in 49 peacekeeping missions since 1948. The Secretary General stressed on India's engagement in deep reform of the global financial architecture, which currently favors the richest countries at the expense of the rest. He also urged India to become a global superpower in renewables technology and a manufacturing hub to fuel this revolution around the world. He added that India's voice on the global stage can only gain in authority and credibility from a strong commitment to inclusivity and respect for human rights at home. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Modi will participate in the 10th Heads of Missions Conference being organized in Kevadia, Gujarat by the Indian Ministry of External Affairs. 118 ambassadors and high commissioners from Indian missions across the world will participate in the conference. Prime Minister Narendra Modi unveiled the indigenous basic trainer aircraft HTT-40 made in India at the ongoing DEF Expo 2022. Prime Minister Modi on October 19th unveiled the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited made indigenous basic trainer aircraft HTT-40 during his visit to the India Pavilion at the DEF Expo 2022. The state-owned aerospace and defense company is also hopeful of getting the certification for immediate jet trainer HGT-36, which will replace the aging Kirans of the Indian Air Force fleet. When inducted into the IAF, the force will have two types of indigenously made trainer aircraft for the IAF and naval pilots. In the past 2 decades, India had suffered from the lack of adequate numbers of trainer jets, leading to a major gap in pilots' training. The indigenously designed and developed HAL HPT-32 was grounded after a decade, as several crashes were reported in a short period of time, killing experienced pilots. The aircraft was powered by a piston engine. To fill this gap in the interim, the IAF acquired 75 Pilatus PC-7 Mk2 planes from Switzerland. The HTT-40 will fill the gap in the required number of trainers with the IAF. The recent introduction of 5G technology and connectivity will help take the education system of India to next level. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on October 19 said the 5G telecom service would take the education system in the country to the next level, as the latest technology will go beyond smart facilities, smart classrooms and smart teachings. He also asserted that the new education policy will pull the country out of the slave mentality surrounding the English language. The Prime Minister was speaking after launching the Gujarat government's Mission Schools of Excellence initiative at Adalaj town in Gandhinagar district. He pointed out that knowledge of English was considered as the mark of being intellectual, even though the English language is just a medium of communication. The mission will help strengthen education infrastructure in Gujarat by setting up new classrooms, smart classrooms, computer labs and overall upgradation of the infrastructure of schools in the state. He said students can now experience virtual reality, the Internet of Things and other cutting-edge technologies in their schools with the help of 5G service. The PM also advocated the use of the local language to make sure that those uncomfortable with English are not left behind. The Prime Minister said youngsters now have the option to pursue studies in other languages. Heavy rains have lashed Karnataka state in India, with stormy conditions approaching the eastern coast. The India Meteorological Department has made a forecast that heavy rains will lash Karnataka state for the next 5 days and issued a yellow alert for several districts. According to the forecast, Bengaluru city will also receive heavy downpours in the coming 2 days. Meanwhile, the yellow alert has been issued for the districts of Dakshina Kannada, Uttara Kannada, Udupi, Chamarajanagar, Kodagu, Shivamoga, Belagavi, Haveri, Bagalkot, Kalaburagi, Koppal and Bellary. This year, Bengaluru received record rainfall of 1,706 mm, breaking all prior records. Meanwhile, dark clouds, heavy rains and stormy conditions look set to approach the eastern parts of the country this weekend, with a cyclone's birth in the Bay of Bengal imminent. According to IMD, a persistent cyclonic circulation over the North Andaman Sea and neighborhood will influence the formation of a low pressure area over southeast and adjoining east central Bay of Bengal during the next 24 hours. This low pressure is expected to move west-northwestwards and concentrate into a depression over central Bay of Bengal by the morning of October 22nd. Once the system strengthens into a cyclone, it will be named Cyclone Sitrang. Diwali marks the Hindu New Year for Indians, especially business persons and traders. While volatility is the order in markets across the world due to conflicts and post-COVID inflation, analysts say the Indian markets would remain positive despite the recession in the West. Geopolitical concerns have made things worse, and continued rate tightening by most central banks in developed countries are keeping investors on the edge. But analysts project that investing in stocks, at least in India, is still a good idea. There's a word of caution though for the average investor to focus and play the market carefully. Overall, analysts see gains, more so in volatile times. Some stocks, especially infrastructure related, would remain winners. The Indian rupee has touched new low against the US dollar. Yet the Indian stock market ended with a third straight day of gains on 19th October. NSE Nifty finished 25 points higher at 17,512, while BSE Sensex gained 146 points and closed at 59,107 levels. Bouncing back from its early fall, the 30-share BSE Sensex climbed 95.71 points or 0.16% to settle at 59,202.90 at the end of day trading on October 20th. The trailer of upcoming Bollywood film Bhediya, starring Varun Dhawan and Kriti Sanon, has been released. The trailer of Bollywood actor Varun Dhawan starrer Bhediya has been released. On October 19th, the actor took to his social media handles and dropped the trailer, raising excitement among all for this comedy adventure. Sharing the trailer, he wrote, presenting the official trailer of India's first creature comedy, Bhedia, in cinemas on 25th November in 2D and 3D. The trailer presents the life of a boy played by Varun Dhawan who gets bitten by a bhedia, a wolf, and soon starts to behave like a wolf. He howls, craves blood and flesh, and even goes after his friends to eat them. The trailer then introduces Kriti Sanon as a doctor who is also left baffled after discovering Varun's ailment. The trailer looks promising and also has elements of comedy and action. However, it will surely also remind you of Jacob of the Twilight Saga. Speaking about the trailer, director Amar Kaushik said, "Our trailer gives a small taste of enthralling adventure audiences are in for. Bhedia is crafted to be enjoyed in cinemas. It will fill you with a sense of awe and wonder and tickle your funny bone with laughs galore. We are glad that it arrives in all its big screen glory soon." Bhedia is Madoc's attempt to deliver a world-class spectacle in record time. A complete family entertainer with spectacular VFX, giving a grand cinematic experience for all generations. The movie was shot in the picturesque locations of Arunachal Pradesh and Mumbai. Directed by Amar Kaushik, the film marks Kaushik's third feature after Stree and Bala, teaming once again with Jio Studios and Madoc Films. Bhedia also unites producer Dinesh Vijan and Varun Dhawan after the success of Badlapur. The movie will hit theatres on 25th November 2022.
यही चड्डी पहन के कल रात को फूल खिला था। देख देख पीछे से फटी हो गई।
जंगल जंगल बात चली है, पता चला है, अरे चड्डी पहन के फूल खिला है, फूल खिला है।
That's all for this bulletin of the Daily India Report.
Thank you so much, Ankita, for that the update. And yes, quite a lot happening out there, and good to see that entertainment news. Of course, there are certain provisions of the scenes that we can show due to the privacy settings or the copyright laws as well of the movies yet to be released. Well, right now, let's go straight on to our Daily India Report. And ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have for you today on this Friday, the 21st of October 2022. And as I mentioned, and you have seen through those functions and events, all the upcoming events, that there's a lot that's happening out there. For further information, you can always log on to our website, our Facebook page, or subscribe to our EDM, which gets out today. It goes out every Friday, and you'll be notified of all the functions and events taking place right here in Brisbane. And congratulations to the new incoming committee of Queensland Multicultural Council, which held its annual general meeting last night at Radio 4EB. A very well organized AGM, I must say. Well, until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us. It's been wonderful having your company. Always a great pleasure to have you on the show.